Yay! We're live. I hope you can hear me. Those of you out there chatting, yeah, we're hearing me. Are we hearing me? Is the microphone working? Is it loud enough? I've got the microphone up in my face today because I know that last time it was a little quiet. Waiting. All right, here, we're live. Hey, everybody. I'm looking at all you guys chatting. Yay! All right, yes, there's some yeses. I'm so glad to hear that. If you guys were here last month, I did a live and the microphone didn't work and it was like 15 minutes. And talk about dysregulated. So, trying to get the sound working, and eventually we did. But I think we lost some of you, so I'm really glad you're here. I am calling Harry. Harry's our moderator, and he's going to be feeding me questions. So, oh, you know what, guys? I'm going to need these things, my ear pods. Can you hand those to me? Thanks. So I see these questions are coming along. All right, here we go. I'm calling Harry. All right. So Harry, while Rob is finding my ear pods, could you text me the good questions? I'm just going to start saying hi to people here. I'm seeing like right here at the bottom. Goth Vouch, Jedi Master Engineer. We talk about Jedis a lot here. Jedis are the common cultural reference to somebody who's like really got self-mastery, and that's what we're after here, is we're ascending to Jedi level. Hello from Israel. Hey, Israel. Gosh, I hope you guys are safe. Are you safe? Let us know how you're doing. We feel worried about you guys over there. I hope there's no war. Everybody take care. Donna Gibbs calls me Mrs. Runkle. You want to know a secret about me? My name's Mrs. Clayton. Runkle's my maiden name. But Mrs. Runkle is kind of fun to hear. So let's see. Mary Pedersen and Automotive Locksmith. I love your handles. This is so great. Suzanne English from England. I know your name, Suzanne. And it matches your country. There, yes. Yes, Mrs. Clayton's here. Mr. Clayton's trying to find my my ear pods. Harry's going to text me, so don't worry about it. Maybe you can get him started on that. Oh, here's my new ear pod. I got my phone to my ear. What's up, Harry?
Okay, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Heather wants to know, can you do EMDR?
Oh, well, that's interesting. Okay. What was her name, Heather? Is that right? Okay. Hold on. Tell Rob I got my ear pods. They were right here all along. Surprise, right? They were right here all along. So Heather asks, can she do EMDR and my program at the same time? Yep, you totally can. And the question, the clarification was, hold on, okay. Can I hear you, Harry? No? Oh, okay, yeah, we're all set. Okay. You can do EMDR together with my program, but what strikes me as a little strange was that EMDR goes back. For me, EMDR did not go back. I could think about a memory, but I wasn't going to go like talk to death about it. I was going to go ahead and think about it and then use, in my case, I was using hand paddles. Some people use eye movements. I think there's a couple ways to do it. I would just say they're very different practitioners. They have very different styles. And so if you have a practitioner who's getting you to talk in great detail about stuff about the past, I would just say you can still do my program, but I personally find it hard to talk about traumatic memories. I loved EMDR because I didn't have to talk about it too much. It was just the tiniest little references. I tried one practitioner who was very compassionate, and she'd say, "So what's the memory?" And I'd talk about it, and she'd say, "Oh, that must have been really hard." That's like a normal compassionate thing to say, but it was super triggering for me. It actually would make me feel anger. It would make me want to just like push her back, just like, don't stop, don't mess with my trauma. I don't like to talk about it, but my program is not incompatible with anything. But I would say it's not incompatible, but if you're doing any kind of treatment that involves a lot of, like, intentional, like, "Now let's go back and talk about what happened in 1974," it is kinda working at cross purposes with getting free of it. In my techniques, you're putting down on paper you're just putting down on paper whatever is here right now. Seldom will you be thinking about a particular abusive event from the past. You might not. And you just let it come to you, like, in that hour of in that 10 minutes that you're sitting down to write, you're just writing that, and then you're asking for it to be removed. If you do this twice a day, you will eventually get to all the things that bother you. But I'll tell you something that was hard for me when somebody wants to know, like, "So tell me the history of your trauma." There's a bunch of stuff that's already completely over. I'm not triggered by it anymore. I'm not thinking about it. And it's not necessarily fruitful to bring it up. So, but to each his or her own. Just gotta find what works. Pay attention to what makes you feel better, and it should feel better, like it should feel good and better, like, right away. Some people might disagree with that, but this idea, I people write to me who are like, they've been doing something, and for 3 months, they've been crying and feeling worse and worse, and they're being reassured, "Oh, but then it's gonna get better." It's like, I'm a strong believer, like, we need relief, we need to feel better now, we need to feel better today. CPTSD is brutal when you don't have any kinda way out, so, that's why the techniques worked so well for me, is I had a way to feel better right now, how to get some relief, and it didn't prevent me from seeking other things, but, um, I ended up with kind of I got a lot more careful about talking about the past. It's more something that I do to share information and not something that I expect that just talking about it is gonna help me. So, that's my kinda take on that. EMDR, some people really don't like it, they find it triggering, and I would just say if you still think it might be for you, and remember, studies show, and my experience match this, it tends to be a lot better for adult onset traumas. I had some stuff happen to me as an adult, and I went and dealt with that stuff, and I tried it for kids stuff, and it was just like there was it just didn't do anything there. My kids stuff is not accessible to that, it's different. I think that's why CPTSD really is different from the kind of PTSD that suddenly happened to somebody through an event that happened in adulthood. Different brain phenomenon. All right, Harry, have you got a question for me? Go Dog Go asks. Okay, just give me little bits at a time here. I'm 57, male, okay, desperate for ideas on the best ways to build confidence and release guilt. Okay, from CPTSD growing up. Okay, well, what was that? The last part, Harry? Oh, just started your healing. Okay, great. Sounds like maybe you're new to the channel and you came to the right place. I'm all about that. So, I'm going to suggest to you that you find my daily practice course. It's a free course. It's with all the courses over at courses.crappychildhoodfairy.com. And it takes about 40 minutes to take the course and learn these two techniques. One, a special writing technique. The second one is a super simple meditation technique to follow the writing. They always go together. And so you write, you meditate, do that twice a day, and you start to have like an outlet. All that like hamster wheel negativity and self-attack. That's what guilt is, right? Guilt and shame, self-attack. If we're not doing that, we're doing other attack. We're just, really angry at people, mom, dad, those people, my family, the people of my town, the city, the government, some other country, and or institutions. The school you went to, the first grade teacher, the IRS. They're always a good example. Like who doesn't struggle from time to time with resentment at the fact that they have to pay taxes, and we don't, that what good does that do? Just being resentful and grumpy about it. So So that's the technique, is to begin to write down on paper what the fear and resentment is about that. Not digging, not going and trying to do some retrospective on your life, but you just sit down. What's bothering you right now? So if you're having a bad day, let's say somebody cut you off in traffic, you come home, you take out your paper, you get your pen, or you pull over the car and do it. That's the beautiful thing. All you need is pen and paper, and you do it wherever you are. But obviously, you can't do it while driving. You can do it while you're a passenger if it doesn't make you too car sick. And you begin to write down, I have fear that guy cut me off. I'm resentful at that guy because I have fear he cut me off, and fear he thinks he can just do that, and fear the people in this town drive like maniacs, and fear I'll end up dead. Fear this is a competition. Fear people think that I'm a loser. Fear my car is ugly. Fear if I had a nice car they wouldn't do this. So all these thoughts that get triggered when you have like an overreaction or just an intense reaction to somebody cutting you off in traffic, if you pause with it a second, you'll just note that there's like a whole like chorus of fears coming up. I'm no damn good. And it'll always come back to some personal fear about not being okay, not being loved, not being safe, losing everything you've got, being alone, ending up alone. There's these core fears that get activated. And then that's why something that if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you want those reflexes. It's okay to be angry, to honk at that person. Hey, don't do that. But if you're still thinking of it that night and just, can't live your life, can't feel happy, that's resentment. That's resentment. So guilt and shame, I'm going to talk about them collectively for a minute. Guilt and shame are resentment at yourself. Now, just like being resentful at somebody else, your neighbor, some of it is because they did something wrong, and some of it is because you're tripping. You're just spinning. You're spinning on like old thoughts. When you feel guilty and ashamed, it's the same thing. Some of it's because of stuff you did, and some of it you're just spinning. You've got old stuff that's complicating it. And one of the worst things about CPTSD is that you end up with this lack of clarity about like, did I do something wrong? Was it, or is it just me? Am I imagining that somebody else wronged me? And when you get into a conflict with somebody, is it just me? That's like it's this deep confusion that's very hard to get to the bottom of. Part of that is because we got deceived as kids, no, mommy's crying because of you. Mommy's angry because of you. You did this to me. You get this wrong information about what your power really is. And you got trained to shut down what you really thought. And your coping mechanism was to accept that because a kid has to. And then when you grow up, you have to start unpacking that and start getting your perception back and start to get clear, like, when is it just you? So sometimes I see people talk about shame, right? And I don't know, I think they're more they don't have so much like crap in their past as me, because my shame is a combination of things that I call it earned shame. I earned it. And same with guilt. I earned it by, like, what is guilt? It's like, attack on myself because I didn't do what I should have done. I feel guilty. I never RSVP'd for the party and I never showed up. Something like that. Okay, well, if a friend invites you to a party and you never RSVP and you don't show up, you actually may have hurt them. So guilt is a rational feeling, and there's things you can do about it. But when you're carrying a whole lifetime of guilt that never got dealt with because you've been shutting it down, and some of you out there know my word for that, it's called crap fit. You fit yourself to crap. Your true guilt, the thing that you do need to straighten out, is all mixed up with all this other stuff that you never had anything to do with, and you've lost track of what's what. So when you want to start reducing your shame and guilt, you can do this by using the daily practice and writing plenty, plenty and a lot about whatever it is you're worried you did. I have fear. I got invited to that party, and fear I never went. Fear I should have called. Fear if I called, I would fear we were going to have a long conversation, and fear I didn't feel like it. Fear so and so is mad at me, and fear I'd have to hear that whole story about that, and fear I just can't deal with anybody. And these fears just, I'm just making stuff up that I might have if I blew off a friend for a party. I have a friend who had a party recently, and I didn't blow it off, but I gave my RSVP at the last minute, and it was really like it was going to be a Zoom party, and I just didn't want to go. I felt burned out on Zoom meetings, and I didn't want to go. And I didn't have the courage to say, your party's a Zoom party. I don't want to go. And it was actually like this really elaborate, wonderful party. And I probably would have enjoyed it, but I was tired. I didn't want to say anything. What I actually did, just for the record, is I said, I'm sorry, I'm not able to make it. You don't have to tell people anything. You just be polite. So I did, I got in like right under the wire to RSVP in time and not just blow the whole thing off. But I have plenty to feel guilty about. Things much worse than not going to parties. And I needed to straighten those things out. And I can't straighten things out when I don't understand what the problem was. Was it my fault? Is that really my fault? Do I owe an apology? And I've used the daily practice where you don't have to like rush in and apologize for something. Actually, sometimes you do. Sometimes by necessity you do. But if something's been festering a long time, you can write about it for several days. And if you can, get a buddy. A buddy's someone you read your fears and resentments to who also uses these techniques. And if you're a member at Crappy Childhood Fairy, you have access to our secret Facebook group. That's where a lot of the buddyship relationships are formed, and also a lot of peer-led daily practice calls. If you take my daily practice course, I will invite you to my free call that I do twice a month. And they're wonderful calls if I do say so. So you can come ask me questions about it. Start getting good at this technique. Just face what it is. Like, what's your fear about this? What's your resentment about this? Then you ask for it to be removed, and don't follow these instructions. This is I'm not really teaching it right here. You go take the free course, get it in detail and do it properly. And then you become clearer. That's what happens. The fear and resentment is making you live in a fog, leaves on the dashboard, on the windshield, or I took a picture of this. I was looking at Instagram early this morning, and one person I follow is Jordan Peterson, and he had this quote that really spoke to me. It said, "Do not hide unwanted things in the fog." Isn't that the truth? Do not hide unwanted things in the fog. I think that's one of the new rules for life from his book. And but it immediately spoke to me instinctively, and that's what we're doing here. We're not hiding in the fog. We're clearing the fog for a minute, and we're writing unwanted things. Those are the fears and resentments. Some of them need to be expressed. Some of them are apologies that need to be made. A vast majority of them, it's just space junk. It's just clutter in your mind of residue of feelings you once had, experiences that are over now, and you can begin to move them out. And like EMDR is not, we don't do EMDR here. That's not the technique, but I've done it. It helped me. And there's something parallel about it. In EMDR, you're taking things that are memories that are just, they're stuck in like active mode. They're still adrenalized. They're still giving you panicky feelings about every time you think about it. And it's sort of de-electrifying that. And then it just becomes a memory. It drops into the bucket of memories that you have. And it's a memory you can, if somebody says, "Do you remember when you found that person dead?" I'll say, "Yeah, I remember it quite precisely." But when I remember it or talk about it, I don't go into the full adrenaline response that I had when I walked into the room and found this person. Very traumatic experience I had long ago. And I had EMDR for it. And one session, like that whole thing stopped. It was wonderful. The daily practice is something like that. And what we're doing is we're facing what those dark thoughts are. Fear everything's my fault. Fear I'm shit. Fear no one likes me. Fear I'm so ugly. Fear I do nothing but get older. Fear it's only getting worse. Fear I'm going to end up alone. I face those fears. I've got them. They're in there. They're floating around. I face them. I get them on paper. I ask for them to be removed, and then I rest for a while, and doggone it if I don't have some mental freedom for quite a while afterwards. Sometimes it's barely noticeable, sometimes it's profound. So I just keep doing it twice a day for 27 years. And so many of my old self-hatreds and hatred of other people and rejection and hard things that have happened, losses, all of that just gets lighter and lighter. And with less of my energy pouring out into stuff that used to happen, I'm here now. I'm doing what I love doing. I'm on YouTube Live. How about that? Who'd have thunk? Really, like no one would have thought that about me. I was too bogged down in my problems back then. So it sets us free to become ourselves. Some people are going to go on to make a lot of money. Some people are going to go on to get married and have children. Some people are going to get out of a bad marriage and go on a road trip. We're all going to become ourselves. We're going to do the thing that not only brings us joy, but allows us to bring our gifts to bear in the world. That's really the point of this. There's happiness is kind of a tentative thing until you're really grounded in being you and bringing your gifts into the world. And gifts, if you haven't heard me talk about these, I got a lot of videos about them up there. Your gifts are the things, they're not just, you have a lot of talents, but your gift is the thing that's there that brings everybody up, that lifts up everybody around you. And you have a need to do that. You're going to feel a little bit like life is passing you by until you are doing it. And it's hardly anybody can use their gift when they're dysregulated. Some exceptions I can think of are maybe somebody's really good. Maybe they're a ambulance staff person, an EMT, it's called here in the US. You go out and you go deal with horrible situations and car crashes and things. Well, somebody's gift might be to bring comfort and reassurance in those situations. I would probably just bring hysteria. I'd be like, ah, ah, ah. Probably not my gift, but some people, you've probably encountered them before, or you've been in the hospital and there was one particular nurse that when she was standing with you, you just kind of felt really like you were in good hands. She probably had the gift of healing. So some people have these gifts, and it's really fulfilling for each person to be doing what makes them happy. So the ambulance driver, and in some cases medical personnel, when their gifts are active, they are going to be around some very dysregulating stuff. And for people who confront crises like that in particular, it's so important to be able to stay regulated. Some people, they just stay regulated. They're just good at it. I tend to get very amped up, and I used to say, oh, I'm so good in a crisis. I'm good in a crisis. Good in my mind. Very dysregulated. Very just jumping in there, not really like in my body at all. So some of you might have that too. Are you actually good in a crisis, or are you just like energized in a crisis? So that's there's a little bit on that one. Have you got another question for me, Harry? Thank you. Thank you for that good question. Okay. Little fragments at a time that I can repeat as we go. Yeah. Tori Trayer says, what advice would you give someone who wants to share their experiences and trauma to help other people? Okay. It sounds like you're having I'm just going to speculate that you've had a really big healing, because when you heal, you have this intense desire to share it with other people. And that is, I'm so happy for you if that's happening, that you have a desire to share it. Here's the controversial thing I have to say. Like, the traumas that I've been through, as much as I put it all up on YouTube, it's maybe like 10%. I don't share it all with you. Some of it's private. Some of it would be too triggering. Some of it isn't really helpful to anybody. I use what stories are necessary in small doses to teach a greater idea out there. And so, yeah, one of the things about my job is that people write to me sometimes because they feel a kindred spiritness, and they send me a trauma story. And it can be quite hard for me to, people will send me a long letter. And I really do. When people send me a personal letter, I do try to read it. My team now like screens my mail so that if anything's like mean or spam or whatever, I'm not there. Everybody's working to help me right now to protect my, my heart and protect my bandwidth. And, I work online, so sometimes there's like haters and stuff. So they protect me from that, which is wonderful. Very, very good service they're doing. But people will tell me long trauma stories, and sometimes those can be very upsetting to me or dysregulating. So I would just say the best thing you can do as you prepare to use your story as a way to help other people is to really practice and develop your strength around teaching the principle that you're teaching, and use your story sparingly. And like one thing that you'll never hear me talk about, I won't get into detail about sexual abuse or violence, because I can touch that in the lightest possible way and just say, there was sexual abuse, and you know what I mean. And I know you don't want to hear about it. and it's hard for me to hear about yours. There is a time and a place to tell people, but YouTube or yeah, and so it can be a little bit of a dangerous neighborhood here. When people sometimes open their hearts here in the comments, sometimes yucky people get in there and say unkind things to them. Some of it's laughable. You've probably seen some of them. They're like, "Oh my god, everybody thinks they have PTSD. Get over it." And we all just laugh, but we do get rid of that person. It's just like, "Yeah, we don't need you here." We work really hard to keep the conversation safe, and we allow people to talk in detail about stuff, but sometimes if they get into anything graphic or detailed, even though that's a true part of the story and people deserve to be heard, for their own protection, we take it off, and also to protect the sensitivities of other people. Just in case you think that healing means you ought to be able to talk about everything, it isn't for me. And some of you have heard the story of when I got to spend some time with Pete Walker, who wrote the book CPTSD From Surviving to Thriving. It's over on the shelf. I won't go get it. Great book. I recommend it all the time. He's the one who really named and defined some aspects of CPTSD that a lot of us, like, it set us free to realize, oh, it's not me. I'm not crazy. It's a known phenomenon. In particular, he defined emotional flashbacks and abandonment melange. Those two things were so liberating to me. But I got to go talk to him. He lives and practices in my town. Very busy guy, very generous, but very hard to get time with him. And I think I've told you guys he's going to be on my show here soon when he has time. But he said he would, and he's good for his word. So I'll get to have a conversation with him for you guys very soon. Let's not say very soon. Someday, someday soon, I think. Anyway, the hard thing about it is he sits there and he looks right in your eyes, and he's not like pressing me or anything, but you instinctively feel with him that you can tell him what's going on. I went to see him to actually get some advice about being crappy childhood fairy and what to do when sometimes people, they get on here and they say, I think I'm going to kill myself. And I'm just like, whoa, that is a comment I immediately delete. So just in case you're thinking of saying that on this channel, you'll get deleted. No one's going to reply to you. This is the worst place in the world to reach out for help. And I'm just telling, like YouTube, it's so anonymous. Nobody can get to you. Just in case anybody ever has that thought, I'm not, you've heard me say therapy didn't help me, but if that were my thought, the number one thing is you go talk to a professional and get some help because they know how to save your life. Save your life. That thought is PTSD talking. But I asked Pete Walker, what do I do when people say that? And he's the one who said, it's like you take it out, you shut it down, you don't even take it on. So I got that from the man himself, and I trust his opinion. But when I came out of that conversation and I just said, oh, and here's a little about me, for 3 days, I couldn't work. I was so dysregulated. When I talk about my trauma, I get dysregulated. So I'm still very measured about how I talk about it. So for the question of, if you want to share your story, I would just say you'd be surprised how triggering it is for everybody when we go into graphic detail about our trauma. And there's this idea that telling our story is therapeutic. And if that's been true for you, I respect your experience. It's not true for me. Telling my story in a way that's carefully, whenever you hear me talk about the past, except in a live call or something where obviously I'm off the cuff, but I write it in advance. I write it carefully. I choose carefully what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. I don't say it carelessly. I don't want to trigger people unnecessarily. You don't, So that's kind of what I want to say to people who have the urge to use their stories. Now, that said, I used to go and tell my story I used to tell my story in different contexts, professional contexts, faith contexts, and I told different aspects of the story where I didn't go into any of, let me back up a little bit. I used to talk about what was done to me. Part of my healing from childhood PTSD is to be able to understand and then describe to you what it's like to be me. And that's where the magic happened for all of us, right? Is a bunch of you said to me, I have that too. And I'm like, you're kidding. You have that too. So it's like a thing. And I get 100 messages a day from people who heard me describe what they go through. And that was the first time they knew it's a thing. It's not you, it's a thing. It sets us free. It's a really powerful thing to happen. So we do want to tell our stories. telling, and I became aware that whenever I touched on certain aspects of my story, I started to notice I used to, I used to be like a corporate trainer and stuff, and sometimes I'd tell an anecdote, but I was gradually noticing that when I told a story about my life in a certain aspect or way, first of all, my body would get really hot. I'd end up having to drink about I have to have all this water with me when I do this. I just like steam is flying out of me when I'm doing this, when I talk about this. It's like something comes upon me and I'm doing it. And I noticed that people in my audience were just sitting there like in a good way. They were really listening, and someone who was mentoring me suggested to me and said, "I think you might have a gift that when you tell your story, it's doing something for people, and you should develop that." And that's kind of how I started this. It started as a blog. Then one day I noticed that the video I made to show people how to do the daily practice had more followers than the blog. I wasn't even paying attention for the first 2 years. So that's what happened. I found out that video is the best medium and telling my story can be helpful to people. And then it's all about working and trying to do better at that and use feedback. If you're thinking of telling your story, YouTube's pretty cool. Now, watch out though, because it's online forever. Like you'll never have that secret again. And you got to really be conscious of that. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes you want to be recovered enough to have good judgment about what to share. You may want to bring in another person to help you decide, should I talk about this? And be careful, because once things are online, they're never going to be not online. And remember, YouTube is owned by Google. Google's already, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to get my channel shut down, but just be mindful of what you say online. And if you get any kind of popularity at all, trolls are going to attack you, and you have PTSD. So yeah, your story, your healing can benefit others greatly. And at the same time as you give that to them, you have to be very protective of yourself and of your privacy and your dysregulation. When you're dysregulated, you can't help anybody. So, yeah. I'm really excited though, because when people get to that stage where they want to help others, it's a very, very positive threshold that you've crossed over. It goes over from like thinking everybody's against you to going, I want to share this. I just want to get up on the rooftops. I want to share this. I had this urge to share it for 20 years before I actually started the blog. I was getting recovery, but I didn't have something that was easy to package up and share here until I understood the term CPTSD. That was the magic day. And I was like, it's a thing. So I knew my experience. I knew how I was coping with it, but now there was a name for it. There was like articles I could read. I could read books. I could consult experts. And suddenly it became something shareable. So long story there. Hey, by the way, I wanted to say, as I promised here, for everybody here, for today, I've created a coupon for today, and the coupon code, if you want to go buy something at courses.crappychildhoodfairy.com. See, we just raised prices, and I know for a lot of people that sort of shut you out. And you can go get 25% off, which I think restores everything back to original price. This is not coaching. You can't get a coaching intensive or a coaching meeting at a discount. That just always costs what it costs. But you can get courses or membership. My favorite thing is membership for 25% off at courses.crappychildhoodfairy.com. And the coupon code is 25OFF May 15. 25 off May 15. So Harry, maybe you would write that in the chat for me. 25 off May 15, one word. That's the coupon code today. And you can go buy anything you want except coaching over there. That would be Healing Childhood PTSD, dating course, the new Connection Boot Camp. Woo! That one's like the biggest, most intense course yet. And Dysregulation Boot Camp. People love that one. You can have any of those, or you can get them all in one happy package. The membership is how you get all the courses. It's the most economical way to get everything. And with membership, you also get to join 2 group coaching calls with me every month. You also get access to a secret Facebook group where you can meet other people who are in the program and find buddies. So just wanted to share that with you, and I'll mention it again later in the call, but I wanted to make sure you have that. All right. So I'm ready for another question, young Harry. Don Carlock asks, oh, hi, Don. I know your name. Uh-huh. Okay, tell us about obsessing over something that angers us or triggers us. Yeah, she said, I know you mention it at times, but wow, it sure does resonate with me. Yeah, anger. uh Anger, that intense, like, rage or hatred or anger grabs your nervous system so hard and renders you so inert. And you know what really bothers me right now is a lot of people have figured out how to, like, stir that up in people, and I feel like that happens a lot on social media and the news. There's intentional anger creation and getting, trying to get people obsessed, because when people have given away all their power to anger, you can manipulate them. So take back your power, and start to have some mastery over your resentment. Now, we're all human. We all get resentful, and anger is a natural emotion that is a good emotion to have because it's how we protect ourselves. So I'm going to make a separation between anger being the healthy emotion. Somebody comes up and shoves you. Anger is an appropriate feeling, and it's going to actually give you adrenaline and alertness so that you can respond to that situation and keep yourself safe. Resentment is when you can't stop thinking about it, and, that obsessing on it, like you said, Dawn, obsessing on it, and obsession is the worst waste of your life. This life is so precious, and to, like, take this consciousness of ours, like, some people are able to use their consciousness to create cures. So, you guys, have you been around for a few months? My kid's dad, Harry's dad, has multiple myeloma, and people have been working on that for years, and guess what? He's gonna be okay thanks to their work. So instead of being resentful, those people got busy, okay? That's the kind of thing that people can accomplish when they're free of resentment. But when we get loaded up with resentment, we all know we've encountered those kind of people, and they've affected our lives in terrible ways. They're abusive, they're violent, and quite often they've lost their sanity. I often mention, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we have a lot of people who are mentally ill live here, live out on the streets. It's a place that is very tolerant, and I guess as places go, fairly supportive of people who are in that situation. So we see a lot of it. And if you walk down the street downtown where I live, there's often people just screaming and ranting. The place where I get my hair cut, every time there's a guy stalking around with no shirt, you know, just saying the worst, most hateful things about people that are unspeakable, and everybody just ignores it and has coffee and just like it's nothing. That's where resentment will take you. It'll destroy you, and it'll destroy your gift. And I'm telling you, the world really needs all hands on deck right now. Everybody's gifts are needed. We do not have room to just sit around and spin about what we saw on TV. We need to heal, summon up our goodness, and become agents of good in the world. Ascend to Jedi status, as I said to our Jedi buddy here. Jedi is the common cultural reference for someone who is like a knight, and that's what we have the opportunity to be. So, first of all, I just want to say, just categorically, there's no room for resentment. I too had terrible things happen to me as a kid. I too spent a lot of time resentful about it. I've been able to process those memories so that they're not electrified and causing me to be obsessed on them anymore. They've been able to recede into the background of memories. It helps that those people are no longer around. They're not actively triggering me, and there are people who do actively trigger me, and when I see them, it's hard, but it's so much easier for me to remain intact as a person, as a mind, as a spirit around triggering things, because I'm diligent in getting free of my fear and resentment. There's very little logic to fear and resentment. We can talk about it till the cows come home, but there's not a lot to say except that it looks like this, and I am resentful at, so and so, or it's a person or an entity, because I have fear. They did this, and again, I don't want you to just copy what I'm saying here. Go take the course. I'm referring to a very specific technique here. We never just make a list of what we resent. That's just ranting. It's not a written rant. It's more like a confession that this is going on in our minds. And if you're honest with yourself, you have resentments. All of you, all of us, we're human. We have resentments that if we were to say them out loud would be just like that shirtless guy by my hair cutters off place, just saying the unspeakable things. We have thoughts that are unspeakable. Okay, so we're still at a point where we can control our mouths and we don't say it, but it's in there. It's in there and it's just as destructive. It completely just robs you of your joy, of your power. Because power, let me talk about power. The power in the sense that I'm using it, power is you wake up in the morning and there's an energy to you. When you are empowered with the power I'm talking about, you wake up looking reasonably forward to your day, feeling good about what you're about to do, getting yourself ready, feeling purposeful about it. Yes, you can brush your teeth. Yes, you can keep yourself clean. Yes, you can show up on time. All those things take power. It takes power to do those things. And then advanced power, maybe you can earn a paycheck and raise a child and uh, run a taco truck. You know, there's all these things that people they do amazing things. Like, how did they do that? Well, power showed up for them. They had a ratio of power to problems where power won. They got something done, right? Sometimes power loses. Sometimes the resentment beats out power and pushes people down, destroys everything. So I keep circling back, Dawn, to just say, first of all, just disavow this obsession. Just consider it wrong. There's nothing for you here. There's nothing for you here. You write down what the fears and resentments are. You ask for them to be removed. And when you get a little break from that resentment, then what's going to be left? Not nothing. See, that's often the fear. I used, when I first started this back in 1994, another century, I was afraid that if I didn't have my resentment, it's like my resentment kept me safe. My resentment gave me a personality. I thought I was, the Simpsons, the guy next door who goes Oakley dokley with the sweaters and stuff. I used to always say, I don't want to end up like that. I thought that that's what like spiritual people who weren't angry were like. They were just foolish. They were just to be made fun of. They were soft. They were boring. And I wanted something exciting. But you know what? I'll tell you what's boring. Resentful people are boring. Nobody wants to hear it. Let's just be honest. So we get free of that so that now we have like a fresh idea. We have inspiration. We have some love in our hearts in terms of like how it's received by other people. Like people who are inspired, friendly, have some energy, fun, and there have been times in my life when I was in the hospital once for a month straight and I was still doing the daily practice regularly. And, even though I had this horrible, scary thing going on and we didn't know what was going to happen and I was fairly isolated, I made friends with the people available and my life progressed during that month. I made friends. There was this group of nurses who came into my room at night and just supported me and talked to me. And I had tremendous personal growth during this month of just like great big bummer going on. It's not the situation. It's not the situation. It's power. Power showed up in me to heal from that problem as much as I could. And power showed up in me to keep growing as a person under those circumstances. I could have been quite resentful. I was initially. It was a medical mistake. It was 14 major surgeries. It was quite a nuisance and 44 ER visits, emergency room visits. I was pretty mad and I was obsessed and I was left with like all these problems. Well, guess what? I had these problems that they said would never heal. And they did heal. They eventually healed and they healed when I had gotten free of the resentment. And I'm not trying to introduce magical thinking here and say, oh, all health problems, it's just resentment. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying I was having a really hard time healing things that ought to have healed fairly easily. And the surgeon kept saying, I just don't know why, there's like only a 3% chance that somebody's not going to heal from this. And you're always in the 3%. I just don't understand why. And, well, guess what? It took me a couple years of a lot of writing and a lot of being willing to change my life. But then I sort of got back into just regular healing mode. And that's what I learned. Like when we carry all that resentment and all that self-attack, that's what PTSD does. It's a nervous system injury that then turns around and keeps injuring your nervous system. And your nervous system is what drives your immune system and your blood flow and your cell function and your thinking and your talking and your digestion and your metabolism and your hormones and your reproductive cycles and everything. It's run by your nervous system. So if your nervous system is under attack by your own mind all the time, you're in trouble. And that's why people who have had childhood trauma have this incredibly, like, we are the healthcare expensive people. We're the ones who suffer with the diabetes and cancer and heart disease and reproductive disorders and cancer, and not to mention learning disabilities, like everything bad. You go to a prison, how many people in there do you think have CPTSD? Probably 100%, right? So we're the ones. We pay the price. If we can't get free of this, we're the ones who are going to pay the price with health problems and life problems and difficulty connecting. So I just exhort everyone, like, take this very seriously. If you find that you're resentful, if you find yourself getting all inflamed when you read news or watch somebody on TV who's trying to convince you that you're one of the good people, but half of everybody is evil, like, beware. Your nervous system is not going to fare well under this, laboring under this delusion. If you want to make the world better, start with yourself. If you want to make the world better, start with yourself. Clear your mind, clear that resentment using the tools. I'm giving you very simple free tools you can use to do it, and dedicate yourself to it, and just watch what changes around you. Watch what changes. I was just a depressed blob for a while, and now I feel much happier. My CPTSD is more healed, and I feel more useful because I've gotten free enough from all that belief that, about being, I thought I was ruined forever. I'm not ruined at all. I'm dented up a little bit, but I'm not ruined. And it turns out I had gifts in me, and I get to use them and enjoy them and have things go better for me. Still totally have CPTSD. Anybody close to me will see it from time to time. It still shows up, but I know what to do about it. And when you know what you can do, when those feelings, like, why do we've been talking a lot about isolation, and the new connection course is out now, and it's a lot about, like, isolation, and really just going on a deep dive on, like, what's happening with that. Why are you doing that? You know why we isolate? We isolate because it's too damn much for us people and all that. It's so triggering, and you get overwhelmed. It's overwhelming to just be alive out there in the world if you have nowhere to put all this, like, spinning that happens. It's overwhelming. So a lot of us self-regulate by just avoiding people. And if we don't do it flat out, like being a hermit, we do it in a pretend way, what I call covert avoidance, pretending, just going and having shallow relationships. Hi, Bob, how's it going? Okay, bye. Putting up, making an appearance, but never really connecting with anybody. It'll hollow out your life so bad. And then your time's up and you'll be sorry. I'm just telling you, get real about that. The most important thing in your life is that you are your real self connected to others. That's what you were made for. And we were talking about this. We have the group coaching intensive, and somebody in there was talking, and they were saying that they just had this, like, free floating resentment about having to do recovery at all. It's not fair. And it's true. It's not fair that you were hurt. But what that points to is that there's this ideal version of ourselves, that we have an idea. We actually are aware of the good self that we actually were made to be. It's there somewhere. And it's frustrating sometimes that we can't be that it's hard to get there, that it's dented, that people have done terrible things to us. It's frustrating and sad sometimes, but it's there, and we're going to bring it forward. We're going to bring it forward. And that's what if you're here on this channel at all, you're working on it already. How amazing. What could be a better use of your time than to overcome your trauma and start to become your real self and become a Jedi of somebody who has love to give, somebody who's solid, somebody who can take care of things, somebody who can respond to problems. If you have an earthquake in your neighborhood, you can be the one who helps people because you're not so triggered that you've avoided everybody. You can think of others. You can find your way to be of service to other people, even if your job is something that doesn't involve that gift. Everybody has to make a living. That's okay. That's noble and good too. But we need to use our gifts. to be happy and fulfilled. We got to be using our gifts, and trauma absolutely gets in the way of that. So here's why your resentment is good. Here's here, here's here's my counterintuitive argument about why actually, Dawn, I'm really glad you have this terrible resentment, because it's causing you enough pain that you have to do something about it. That you're here on this call at all and you're asking this question. That is like, that's very advanced. You're in the PhD level now. Yes, it's hurting you so much that you don't want it anymore. And now you're going to put it on paper, because I know you know these techniques. You're going to put it on paper and you're going to face it so that you can be rid of it. If you can't face it, you'll never be rid of it. If it's just in the fog, right? Everything's shoved off in the fog. I don't know, maybe if I don't deal with it, it'll go away. Well, did it? Has it? Some things, but you know what hasn't gone away. Everybody knows, we have our problems that are just we're stuck with. Now, no matter what you do for healing, you're still going to be a human being, and you're still going to have faults. You're still going to make mistakes. You're still going to have pain. If we live long enough, the people we love will die. We'll have that sadness. So life is going to go on. But how will we show up for it? How will we? How about with strength of heart, with generosity, with kindness, no division? We'll show up and we'll keep being encouragers. And we'll be our real selves. We'll be our real funky ass selves. Weird as that might be, we get to be ourselves. We can only be ourselves. Right? Being ourselves isn't an excuse to just dive into cruelty. It's your kindness, patience, open-mindedness, all of these virtues, they help you being yourself be successful for you. So that's on the other side of the resentment. It's the good things and the way that you contribute and the things that actually bring fulfillment to your life. And the ability to have a partner if that's what you want, the ability to make a living. Most people want those things. All right. Real funky ass self. Yes, Anna Reed. I did say that. Your funky ass freak self. It's been a long road for me because I'm funky ass. I'm so funky. So I made a YouTube channel about it and found my friends. All right. Is there another question here for us, Harry? Jackie asks. Starting a new relationship. Uh-oh. How what? Oh, how authentic should I be about my trauma? That is such a good question. Well, this ties in a little bit to what we were talking about sharing our story. In my dating course, I have really specific advice about this. So if anybody has CPTSD and you're embarking on dating, I just really encourage you to check out that course. And I don't think it's like anything else out there. And there's this chunk of content in there where I talk about the magical thinking and crap fit that causes us to choose bad people, that I'm just like, check this out. I never found anybody who talked about it. I wrote about it and people relate to it, and you might find it helpful. So our trauma story. All right, we've been conditioned, and I think this is especially among women. It's like a female culture thing to lead with our trauma, to lead with our pain. And we go, as soon as we become friends with people, we show intimacy to each other by saying, by disclosing, what's hard for us, what we struggle with. That's how we show trust and friendship with each other. So that's not inherently bad. But when your trauma story includes, the things that I don't talk about that much here in graphic detail, let's say that you were horribly sexually abused, for example, or beaten by a parent. And I won't say more about that. As I said earlier in the call, if you weren't here, I never go into detail about that. It's only triggering. I only have to touch and reference those things. And you know what I'm talking about. For somebody who's just dating us, they don't need to know that. Not at the beginning. They don't need to know that. And the healing that we need to have going into dating is that our identity does not equal what people did to us. Your identity is the pure you. You are you. What happened to you is what happened to you. And so if somebody's on their first few dates with you, they just want to know, who are you? What happened to you is history. Who are you is your being. And so you can present your being. And it's just like everything in life, everything happy about recovery depends on starting to have that separation, what happened to you and who you are. I think I said earlier today, my mom was an alcoholic, and I got a lot of help from going to 12-step programs for people affected by alcoholism. And for a long time, I would always say, it's like, why are you here? It's like, well, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. Oh my gosh, I'm like 15,000 more people than that, adult child of an alcoholic. And I got so tired of it's like, I'm not a child. Technically, yes, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic, but these days, that's not why I have problems. I have problems because I have PTSD. I've got this brain thing where I get very dysregulated sometimes when something stresses me out. It probably did start with behavior around her alcoholism, but that's her story, and it's good for me to know there's a reason why I have this. That's useful to know, but everything in my recovery depends on me understanding and being aware. What's going on with me? How am I doing? Are my triggers activating? What are they? What triggers me? And how do I bring those triggers down? Like if you can get some mastery over your triggers, everything about CPTSD begins to fade. Everything bad about CPTSD is caused, really, the intermediary cause is you get triggered. You get triggered, then the bad thing happens. You say the bad thing. Your nervous system can't heal your wounds, Then the bad things happen. Your endocrine system gets messed up and you can't metabolize sugar, right? You pick a terrible partner who treats you badly. That all comes from dysregulation. Dysregulation is triggered. If you can start to notice your triggers and calm them, you can break the chain there. You can start to break the whole flood of bad things that happen because of CPTSD. That's how that recovery happens. That's how it happens. Part of that is going to involve telling your story sometimes. Part of getting to know somebody intimately is going to involve telling them your story and allowing them to know you and know what you've been through, but it's not top line. So it's not inauthentic not to talk about that stuff. It's polite, it's measured, it is boundaried. I think boundaries are I used to really underrate boundaries. I thought it was psychobabble. Boundaries are really important. I think for somebody with CPTSD dating, it really helps to think through in advance. What are your standards about telling them stuff like this? It's important to understand that somebody dating you, especially if they're starting to have feelings for you, and I don't know anything about your story, so I don't mean to imply about you, but since I used as the example sexual abuse, for somebody who's starting to fall in love with you, to have to hear about somebody doing terrible things to you as a child is extremely painful and could be something they would have to run away from. They don't really have the foundation of knowing you, of knowing the totality of you. It's not necessary to go into detail about that or to even mention it at first. The things that I think are important to mention at first are deal breakers such as, uh, I really wanna get married and have children. I don't wanna date anybody who is not open to those things. That would be a good thing to say within the first few dates, right? Or in a dating profile. Or, I am looking for somebody in this particular faith that I'm part of, and that's what I'm looking for. Those are important to disclose at first. But the bad things that other people did are not crucial for the very beginning. Allow your identity to express itself and show up. And then later, when somebody has shown that they're into you, they're committed to you, they understand the totality of you, you can begin to reveal this stuff. And then still, we're near the top of the hour, but I'll just say, like, getting into a relationship, like a romantic let's say a marriage, a marriage where part of your life together is going to be sex, and sex is super vulnerable for people, and especially anybody who's traumatized, it can open stuff up. It's like, just remember to keep that space, like, really carefully guarded and not just throw in a bunch of stories about abuse in there yet. That's what I'm saying. People are much more delicate than you think. We've all been conditioned to pretend to be tough, but we're not. We're not. And if somebody's gonna love you and you have PTSD, they're probably pretty vulnerable too. So you don't have to do that. And in the dating course, and I'm not just trying to make a pitch for the dating course, but in the dating course, what I talk about a lot is measuring everything. You measure the amount of time you spend together. You don't just go rushing in and get all enmeshed. You don't go rushing into sex, because once you get bonded with somebody, I mean, how many people out there, you never really dated somebody, you just sort of had sex, and the next thing you know, you lived with them. And then, 6 months down the line, there's so many things you don't like about them, but you can't leave because now you're all bonded. Like, how ugh, it's a very, very unfortunate side of trauma. And it can tie up your life. And we do end up with people who don't love us or can't love us or have problems that are just miserable to be with, or who are flat out abusive. You can avoid all of that by taking your time and being measured in how much you open up your life and your heart to people, and measured and slow. So that's what I teach in that one. It's the people who take that course love it so much. It's got the smallest number of students because it's very challenging to people to say you have to go slow in romance. Like, that sounds like it's going to be such a bummer, but I'm telling you, if what you want is to end up in a loving, committed relationship, I've got something for you, and it's pretty powerful. So we're almost at the top of the hour, and I just wanted to say, courses.crappychildhoodfairy.com, the coupon code today, just for today, for coming to this call. I really wanted a whole bunch of people to come to this call, and you came, and I'm so glad. And so I thought if I put this out there, you would come, and I want to reward you. You get 25% off any of my courses: Healing Childhood PTSD, Dating, Dysregulation Boot Camp, or the new Connection Boot Camp, or the full annual membership, the whole Megillah. At 25% off, it becomes about $400 US. And you get all those courses. You get 2 coaching calls a month with me, group coaching calls. Everybody can come to the daily practice calls if they take that course. That's free. Always really good stuff for free, that I hope you'll all take advantage of. And you also get, with membership, you get to come to the secret Facebook group and have daily, peer-led daily practice calls. It's pretty lively there, and people are buddies. They read their fears and resentments to each other, and it's turning into a great community. So it'd be lovely to have you if you can come. If you need to reach me after this, hello@crappychildhoodfairy.com. That's the email, hello@crappychildhoodfairy.com. And that coupon code again, I feel like an 800 number ad here, 25 off May 15, 25 OFF MAY15, 25 off May 15. So thank you to all of you for being here. We're going to be doing this again in a few weeks. I will post it very soon on YouTube, so you can keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a Thursday evening here in California. I think about 6 o'clock. I really want to open it up to people who are in Australia, New Zealand, Asia, other time zones. So hope you can make it. Sorry, people in Europe, that's going to be too late for you, unless you're a night owl. All right. So good to be with you. Thank you for being here. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, you probably have, or you wouldn't know about this, but do subscribe. It does help us. It helps us to have a good number of subscribers. And now that we have a team here working for Fairy, we really welcome your support. So thank you. See you next time. Bye.